Lummis is recognized for 5 minutes from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for allowing me to go ahead so I can go to the floor and pay a little tribute to my dear friend Mike Enzi that you both served with and so many of you served with, who passed away today, and I am deeply grateful for this opportunity, so thank you. Professor Walsh, you mentioned in your written testimony that there are no definitively established definitions in the digital asset space. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. If we can have a law textbook like this one on virtual currency, we should be able to agree on common terms. So why is it so important that Congress and our regulators begin to use the same legal terms to talk about these issues?
Sure. So I've thought a lot about this, and it's been an important part of my research. I think that these problems with terminology come from the fact that these systems are extremely fast-moving, that there are products and activities created in the crypto financial system that kind of mirror the financial systems, but we don't know what to call them. Do you call them the same thing? How are they different, right? So there's a ton of confusion. And we have seen this already reflected in laws that have been passed in a bunch of state legislatures about cryptocurrencies, crypto systems, where misunderstandings and improper terminology is embedded into the definitions of these, in the laws that are meant to, support or enable innovation with cryptocurrencies. And I wish there was an easy solution to this problem. We've been talking about it for years, and the language, people keep adding new terms like minor extractable value and yield farming and a whole bunch of things that everyone has to learn anew when they come into the system. So it's a persistent problem and can have important impacts.
Well, thank you, Professor. And I do think that that's a point where Congress can weigh in. So I'm looking forward to working on that through our Financial Innovation Caucus and perhaps bringing something forward definition-wise for us all to consider. Is it Brito or Brito? Well, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. Can you give me some specific use cases on how virtual currency and the distributed ledger technology that underpins these assets has the potential to reduce the cost of financial transactions for everyone and to create a more efficient financial system?
Sure. Thank you for the question. There are any number of use cases where some function that today is happening in a financial system that depends on a centralized intermediary could be done potentially more efficiently if the two parties who rely on that intermediary can connect, one-on-one. And one example that simply comes to mind would be settlement and finality, right? So today, when you want to trade securities or other assets, you ultimately rely on a series of intermediaries that ultimately have one settlement intermediary where there's a book that is updated by that one party. You can imagine a system that depends on one global ledger that anybody has access to and can swap. Senator Toomey mentioned property registries is a potential there. So today in the United States, we have title insurance. Why do we have title insurance? Well, we have title insurance because the chain of title to a piece of property might have been corrupted somewhere along the way. With cryptographic distributed ledgers, the potential for that is greatly, greatly reduced. And so, for example, you might be able to eliminate the need for that kind of insurance.
Well, that's helpful and informative, because I would note that the St. Louis Fed has noted that the U.S. financial sector cost 8.2% of GDP in 2021, and that payments cost around 1% of GDP. Additionally, billions of dollars in capital is trapped every day because of antiquated means of payment that take days or even weeks to settle. For a Fortune 500 company that regularly sends international wire transfers, this is costly, and it's a very big deal, and it's something that we also might be able to take advantage of by some of these new distributed ledger technologies. Mr. Brito, we hear a lot, both true and false, about how our existing financial system benefits some groups more than others. Isn't the transparency and openness of open source finance a huge benefit that can ensure a level playing field, promote financial inclusion, and create trust in our financial system?
So I fear overpromising when it comes to saying that something like Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies like it will guarantee financial inclusion for everybody. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But what I can say is that because these systems are broadly transparent, you can see where the power centers may be, and you can go and address them, and you can see what the transactions are. And that is a great improvement. And to the extent that you can have parties interacting with each other and doing so transparently, that would reduce the need for trust, as you say.
Well, and one of the points you raised also sort of segues into my next question, and that's about virtual currencies and money laundering. There's a myth that virtual currency is anonymous, but aren't most virtual currency transactions recorded on a publicly available ledger that cannot be easily altered? It seems to me any criminal would avoid creating evidence like that.
Yes, the vast majority of transactions using cryptocurrency are recorded transparently on an open ledger, and these are available to law enforcement. And indeed, talking to law enforcement, they tell us how useful that evidence is. So why do criminals continue to use these networks? Well, because it's Bitcoin and things like it are good for payments, are good for censorship-resistant payments, and so they abuse these networks. But you're right, they create a trail that, with the help of on-ramps and off-ramps that are regulated and compliant, can help law enforcement find and prosecute these criminals.
I thank their witnesses today for their very helpful testimony, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back with my thanks.
Thank you, Senator Lemon. Senator